Ladies and gentlemen, we're expecting some moderate turbulence.
Please remain seated and enjoy the show. Hello.
And welcome to
Moderate Turbulence.
I'm Jeremie.
I'm Adele.
Hi, Adele.
Hi, Jeremie.
Hi, Roxy. Hi. She hasn't had her walk yet today, so she's a little more rambunctious than usual. How are you, Adele?
I'm good. Yeah, it's still obviously summer, so it was nearing the high 20s, so we figured we'd just wait until maybe like after 6 or 7 to walk her. Just because why walk her when it's 28 when you can wait? Obviously, we can walk her in the morning, but our routine is usually we walk her in the evening, afternoon or evening.
Yeah, so we'll wait till it cools down a little bit before she gets her walk. I guess.
How are you?
I'm good. You might be wondering, why is Jeremie wearing a cowboy hat? Well, today is one of the final days of the Calgary Stampede. For those that don't know, Calgary Stampede runs for 10 days in July, and the best way to describe it is our entire city of Calgary transforms for those 10 days. Everybody is a cowboy. Everybody wears their cowboy hats and boots. We actually went out to the Stampede yesterday so that we could try some of the delicious Stampede foods. Lots of deep fried stuff. And you had this weird spicy pickle juice.
Oh, yeah. I had a spicy dill pickle lemonade. Exactly how it sounds. Jeremie tasted it, but, not for him.
It wasn't for me. The spiciness was good. It was really spicy, but the pickle flavor was too intense for me.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird. It's not something I would definitely make or order for myself regularly, but it's Stampede. It's known for weird food concoctions, drink concoctions. There's a lot of weird stuff. There was even ketchup or mustard soft serve ice cream. We didn't try that one just because we tried a lot of other weird stuff. So our stomachs were a bit not going to be happy with us if we kept going.
It was a lot of fried food yesterday. Yeah. You had a vegetarian corn dog. I had some mac and cheese, spicy mac and cheese. I'm lactose intolerant, so not the greatest idea, but still went for it. And then, we had some deep fried desserts. We had deep fried cheese curds as well. Those were amazing.
Yeah. Highly recommend those if you're ever at an outdoor festival or whatever, because obviously these are not just like for Calgary Stampede. These are things that
midway,
can be just like recreated other places. But the deep fried cheese curds were like kind of whim or spontaneous decisions. They were there and we're kind of looking for one more savory thing to try out. And we couldn't find that one corn stand that we wanted to try. So
it had like Mexican street corn, but we couldn't find the actual proper stand for that one. And we looked around like twice for it, but it may have been one of the ones that was closed.
Yeah, it was supposed to be like a good like vegetarian dish. I looked really good online. There was a lot of other corn things, but like that was the one I wanted to try. A lot of pierogi things we didn't try, but yeah, the cheese curds, because it came with an option of marinara sauce or ranch. And the marinara sauce was
it was a hit.
Perfect.
Cheese curds fit perfectly, yeah.
Because imagine a mozzarella stick, but the cheese quality was a bit more elevated and smaller bites, of course, because it's a cheese curd. It's not a long piece of mozzarella.
They're not uniform pieces like a mozza stick would be, yeah.
Yeah, so it's super good. The mozzarella. The marinara sauce is very good. I don't think we could be criticizing the marinara sauce, but it was perfect with that. And now I'm hungry and I want more of those right now.
We haven't had dinner yet, so yeah, that's coming.
It's not super late. It's only like 5:30, so it's not like we're recording at 7 p.m.
Yeah.
So don't y'all worry about us. But yeah, what else? That was it, right?
Yeah,
for the food. I mean, there's a bunch of other things, of course. We had the colossal onion the other night when we went.
Yeah, well, there was 4 of us.
Classic.
Yeah, 4 of us that were kind of sharing that one, and still by the end of it, my stomach was like, "Why so much deep fried goodness?" Stomach didn't love it, but I sure did. It was so good.
Yeah, and if you don't know what that is, it's one whole onion that's chopped up. Like it stays in its like whole shape, but it's like chopped up perfectly, so it kind of looks like a flower. And then it's battered, of course, and deep fried. And then they give it to you. They punch a hole in the middle so you can easily remove certain like wedges of it, and then you get it's a chipotle sauce, I think.
Yeah, like a chipotle style dipping sauce. Yeah,
So good. And it's obviously fried onions, but it's just like a huge thing of it. You need to share it, and it's kind of the better bang for your buck meals I think that you get at Stampede, because how much was it, like $16?
Yeah, in the $15 range, $15-$16. Yeah,
which it's still expensive, but you get such a big portion of it that it's one of the better things, because like the cheese curds, delicious, $12.
yeah.
So it's a lot of money for what we got. And like, obviously you go into Stampede, you realize you're going to spend lots of money. But you go in, you dress up, you have fun.
You know what to expect.
Yeah, there's like lots of different aspects of Stampede as well. There's, of course, a lot of the weird foods. I'm not just weird food, just like lots of food to try out.
There's all the
sweet,
games.
savory, like all the types, lots of arcade games, like any like carnival or like fair.
Exactly.
There's some rides, but Jeremie didn't trust any of them, so we didn't go on any. Plus, they were really expensive as well.
Yeah. And like Ferris wheels, and like what I remember, it used to be called the Gravitron when I was young, so they have that, and a couple of those fun rides. And then of course the main whole attraction of the Stampede is there's a whole rodeo going along with that. We weren't really interested in the whole rodeo aspect, chuck wagon races, a lot of the Western riding type rodeo events, bull riding, things like that, still going on today. And we weren't really in it for that.
I would see the barrel racing. That would be interesting to me, just because that is based on talent of the rider and the horse. And usually it's safer for the animals, but the calf rearing or whatever it's called, chuck wagon races, a lot of, just in my opinion and what I've researched, cruelty happens with those events, just because it's just highly the animals are trained for all of that, but unfortunately with the big production events of everything, a lot of animals get put down every year at the Stampede because of that.
Yeah, sadly.
So that's the part that we don't partake in. And then the other part is the music. So there's huge names that come in, and there's different locations. So quick rundown, and then we're going to go over Stampede.
Just a couple. We won't touch everything, but just a couple things we'll touch on. Yeah.
So Stampede, there's a Stampede grounds where you pay, I think the general admission is about $23. That's where you get all the rides, the rodeo access, the food, all of that. And then there's a couple places inside the grounds that you can see music. So there's the Coca-Cola stage, there's Nashville North, which they serve alcohol, so it's 18 plus. And then there's Big Four. I don't know if it's 18 plus.
It is,
yeah. 18 plus there as well. So different venues within the grounds that you can see musical guests. And then there's the Badlands Music Festival, which was more EDM, you said? EDM music?
Sure.
I thought we had this discussion. No.
Wasn't me.
Anyways, so Badlands Music Festival, there's Cowboys Music Festival, and then there's also the Wild Horse Saloon. There's other tents as well, but those are the main ones outside of the grounds, still close to where everything is.
It's all, they're all in close proximity for sure.
Cowboys, I think, has the biggest names. They had Nelly Furtado, Shaggy, TLC.
We went to
Lynch.
We went to Big Four for our first night of Stampede, and we got to see Shaquille O'Neal DJing,
which is interesting. We can actually put a picture here because we took some pictures. Yeah, the actual Shaquille O'Neal, which I didn't even know DJ'd at all. That was a little bit weird.
Well, I mentioned it to Adele, and Adele's like, "Well, not the Shaquille O'Neal." I was like, "No, it's Shaq. It's Shaq Diesel. He's gonna be there DJing," and it sure as heck was.
Yeah, we didn't see him for very long, just because obviously he came on super late, and then by that time we're a little bit over it. But yeah, so that's a very quick rundown of Stampede. It's just a lot of fun. Calgary, what is it? Triples in its population during Stampede, something like that.
Something crazy like that, yeah.
And then I saw an article, I think, pop up on my Instagram or Facebook that this year so far, Stampede, the Calgary Stampede itself, has had over 1 million guests. So over 1 million people access the grounds of Stampede this year.
Yep.
And that doesn't even count everything else around, just people coming in for the city. Because you could go to Calgary during Stampede, not go to the actual ground and still have like a full like stampede experience. You can dress up because it's not weird to wear a cowboy hat in Calgary during stampede.
Nope.
It's not weird to wear your cowboy boots.
You're almost out of place if you don't have a cowboy hat like downtown during the stampede. Yeah, it's wild. It's an amazing experience. If you haven't been, come on to Calgary for next year's stampede. Again, it runs 10 days in July.
Yeah. So anyways, we're going to move on from stampede now because that's nothing to do with aviation. But that's just pretty much, why Jeremie's wearing the hat. And
keeping the spirit. Yeah.
Pretty much what we've been up to. We've gone twice.
To stampede, yeah.
Yeah. But we still had some fun. And Jeremie has something prepared for us for the rest of the episode today.
Yeah, so a little bit of a throwback. We haven't done this in a long time now, so we're going to be covering an aircraft incident. Yay! No cheers. All right. So for this one, the references I used were Wikipedia and, of course, our favorite YouTuber when it comes to aviation incidents, Alec Joshua Ibe. And also, I remember watching an episode of Mayday on this long time ago. I didn't rewatch it for my script here, but also it was an amazing episode. So today, we're going to be sharing the story of Air Transat Flight 236. Do you know this one? We've talked about it a little bit, but do you remember?
Well, just off the name, I don't recall the details, but...
Okay, well, this one occurred on August 24th, 2001. So this occurred less than a year after I began my aviation career. So the Air Transat Airbus 330 took off just before 9 p.m., and it was going from Toronto to Lisbon, Portugal. In the flight deck, we have Captain Robert Pichet. He's 48, and First Officer Dirk de Jager. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly. He's 28 years old. The aircraft carried 11 flight attendants and 293 passengers. So everything took off. Everything was going normal. And of course, this is going over the Atlantic Ocean towards Portugal. Now, nearly 5 hours into the flight, while they're cruising at 39,000 feet, the pilots receive a warning that there's a fuel imbalance. That means there's more fuel in one of the two fuel tanks than there should be. Something's imbalanced, so they have to check it out. So following their proper procedures, the pilots initiate a cross bleed, transferring fuel from the left tank to the right tank, as the right tank was the one showing it was the numbers were a little bit lower. So as First Officer de Jager ran the numbers, he determined that the fuel consumption was exceeding their normal levels. They contacted the flight attendants and asked if they could go and look out the windows and see if there's any fuel leaking from the wings. It's the middle of the night at this point, and the flight attendants couldn't see anything, so they couldn't determine if there was any fuel leaking. So at this point, while calculating how much fuel was remaining, it was decided that they would not be able to reach Lisbon, so they chose to divert to the Azores. So the Azores are a collection of islands that are part of Portugal, but they're located roughly 3/4 of the way across the Atlantic Ocean between North America and Europe. So they're getting closer to Europe at this point. So they were now chose Lajes Airport, which is an air base actually, and it was chosen as the nearest suitable airport in the Azores. They easily can make it there with the remaining fuel that they have, and they should have some fuel to spare. Now, 28 minutes after this decision is made, engine number 2, so the engine on the right, flames out. So what that means is there's no longer fuel supplying the engine, so it cuts off. When it cuts off, it's no longer providing any thrust to the aircraft, and of course, it's not providing any power either. So Captain Pichet began a descent at this point to 33,000 feet. Again, that's as per the procedures when you're flying with only one engine. At this point, we're approximately 280 kilometers from Lajes Air Base, again in the Azores there. 10 minutes later, a mayday call was sent to air traffic control, specifically Santa Maria Oceanic ATC. Now, just 3 minutes later, engine 1 flames out. So now there's no fuel left on board, so both of the engines stop. So there's no thrust being provided. The plane has no power, and it must glide the remaining 120 kilometers.
Okay.
A little scary. So for the passengers on board, number 1, everything goes quiet. Number 2, everything goes dark. Number 3, they start looking out the window, and they can see that we're starting a turn towards the right, and they're like, where are we going? Why is the sun not where it's supposed to be based on what's happening right now? So At this point here, what happens if your aircraft loses thrust in both engines? You get what's called the RAT, the ram air turbine. It automatically deploys from underneath the aircraft. What that is, it's a small little propeller that with the airflow spins the propeller, and that propeller is going to provide some electrical systems to the aircraft. So now we have certain critical controls, such as some sensors, flight instruments, and some hydraulic power. A few minutes after this, the oxygen masks deploy in the passenger cabin. Remember, we were at 33,000 feet. With the engines no longer running, the engines are no longer providing air for the passengers to breathe, so the oxygen masks deploy. Now, with the help of military air traffic controllers, the plane is guided to land at Lajes Air Base. With their current rate of descent, the pilots calculate that they can glide for 15 to 20 minutes before they would be forced to ditch the aircraft in the Atlantic. They were able to spot the airport, but determined that they were too high and they were flying too fast to land safely. So Captain Pichet executed a 360-degree turn. So he went in a full circle there, and then he basically lined up to make his approach from the south. Now, to safely descend and lose some of that excess altitude, he needed to conduct a series of S-turns. So that's basically where the aircraft is going one way, then the other way, and constantly losing altitude at a safe rate, so that they could line up properly with the runway. If they just said, oh, there's the runway, let's aim for it, they would overshoot it. And at this point, we have no thrust in the engines. We can't go back up and try again. There's no go around. There's no second chances. You have one shot to get this landing right. The aircraft touched down hard 19 minutes after the second engine had flamed out. The aircraft bounced 500 meters and touched down a second time. 8 tires were blown out right away, and then the aircraft finally came to a rest 2,300 meters down the runway. The runway was only 3,000 meters long, so they only had 700 meters to spare. And I don't know, I'm remembering this from past articles. I didn't find it in my research here, but if I recall, at the end of the runway was a cliff. So you don't want to overshoot that runway, because big Airbus 330, which is a big dual aisle aircraft. I mean, we've both worked them. It's a lot of plane, let's say. After a subsequent evacuation, all aircraft occupants survived. There were only 18 injuries, 2 of which were major. So what led to the aircraft running out of fuel over the Atlantic? So an investigation was conducted by Portuguese, Canadian, and French authorities, and the issue was determined to be a fuel leak in the number 2 engine. This particular engine was a replacement that was sent by Rolls-Royce, and it was installed 5 days earlier. But the engine was an older model, and it did not include a hydraulic pump. Air Transat authorized the use of a part from a similar engine, but again, a different model. And the lead mechanic was kind of like, I'm not sure about this. And Air Transat said, no, it's okay. The difference in the parts that they used was just a matter of millimeters, but that caused chafing between lines and thus ruptured the fuel line. Air Transat did accept responsibility for the incident. They were fined by the Canadian government for a substantial $250,000, the largest fine in Canadian history. So that's the story of Air Transat Flight 236, how they glided to the Azores and had a safe landing. Not an easy landing. It was quite rough, but all 300 and some passengers and crew survived that incident.
Wow.
And so I remember this because I had just started flying, and I had just started my aviation geeks starting that whole journey. So I was really, really into this incident when it happened. I remember the interviews with the pilots live on TV shortly after, and interesting one. So basically, they're losing fuel. They initiate their procedures to put fuel from the other tank into the one that was bleeding the fuel out, and then they lost more fuel and eventually lost both engines and had to glide to the Azores. What do you think of that one?
I mean, that's amazing that the pilots did their job amazingly well and then were able to land safely, and that the evacuation went well. I mean, yeah, serious injuries, I don't know what that means, but they survived. So that's pretty much all you can really hope for when the plane essentially has a crash landing. And yeah, lands, bounces.
And it bounced over 500 meters, so half a kilometer.
Yeah,
bounced in the air with a bunch of the tires that had blown on that
clearly like
first
going
one.
way too fast, and it was pretty much like, let's hope this works. But I mean, you don't know for sure, because like a lot of emergency landing scenarios that have happened, you can't really practice for that. You can practice for a worst case scenario, but you don't practice for everything else that can go wrong in that specific scenario. Like there's too many what ifs in a disaster situation. So it's like,
and simulators can only take you so far. When you're actually handling the aircraft and doing it, it's a whole different ballgame. And like I said, you only had one shot at this. So just imagine the pressure on those pilots to get that aircraft down safely.
Yeah.
It's wild, eh?
I mean, that's why the pilots, like, they go through so much training. There's so many regulations. And let's be honest, they make more money than us because there's so much that goes into what they do. Not saying that we are insignificant as flight attendants, but the pilots do have a lot on their plate. Mm-hmm. Yeah, if everything goes right, they're essentially sitting up in the flight deck. If everything goes right for us, we're serving food in the air. But the second something goes wrong, everything needs to go right. So something like this incident can occur and not a disaster.
Yeah.
You know?
So that we can still make the best of a bad situation and have the highest rate of survivability as possible. Yeah, and it's interesting. Like, I think back to the Miracle on the Hudson, the landing on the Hudson there. Again, was it an easy decision for Captain Sully to say, you know what, we're just going to put this plane down in the Hudson? No, definitely not an easy decision. But as the simulation showed, in the movie, in the movie Sully there, it was the best decision to go and land in the Hudson, and everybody survived once again.
But obviously, like, pilots aren't told, like, all right, if you're gonna land in the water, all these things, but best case is to get to an airport. But if you can't, you're not gonna just
give up.
I'm not gonna fly the plane anymore. I can't get to an airport. Like, like we were watching YouTube videos earlier today of aviation fails or
mishaps,
or whatever, and this tiny plane had engine failures or something and had to land on a highway. So obviously, do they want to land on a highway? Definitely not. But you have to figure out where to land, and that's like part of emergency training for pilots, is really problem solving at like a moment's notice. They don't have 30 minutes to figure out. They don't even have 1 minute to figure it out. They just have to do something.
Yeah. And a quick note about this incident as well. Captain Pichet did prepare for a ditching just in case, because, at one point when you're like, oh, we're gliding now, there's no thrust, we don't know if we're going to make it to the airport. So they did, have that sort of as a backup plan, like to prepare for a ditching. So
that means they probably told the flight attendants. Crew, and they probably were doing their due diligence for that. So, I mean, maybe the passengers were evacuating with life vests on.
Yeah, I'm not even sure. There was no footage of the actual evacuation, only the aftermath.
In 2001, yeah.
So that aircraft actually stayed in service with Air Transat until 2021.
Oh, wow. It wasn't a total loss.
Nope. They were able to repair it. It was just mainly the axles and the tires that needed a lot of repair. But that aircraft went back into service.
Oh, wow.
For 20 more years.
So that those pilots saved that plane from being, a total loss, and a whole aircraft is not a good thing to lose as an airline.
They ain't cheap, that's for sure.
Yeah,
aircraft,
let's just, go to the aircraft store and buy a new one.
Can you order one on Amazon now? God, who knows?
Roxy didn't find that funny.
I thought it was funny.
All right. Well, that was a great incident.
Oh, thank you.
Jeremie prepared a lot of research for this, so thank you for that. We're going to wrap this episode up because we have a lot more to talk about. I have some Reddit stories as well, and you're going to see us in the next episode wearing the same thing and the same how we look right now, because we're being proactive. And
we're recording back to back, so you'll have
2 in a row.
2 weeks in a row. You'll get 2 episodes there.
Yeah, because we did miss a couple here, but we were honest. We told you all that we were gonna maybe be twice monthly for the summer, but
we're doing our best. Excellent. So
Roxy.
You were early, Roxy. So if you are out there and you are flying, or if you're going to the Calgary Stampede or whatever you're doing, make sure that you're always nice to your flight attendants,
because they might have to save your butt one day.
Thank you, everybody.
Goodbye. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to rate and review wherever you listen to podcasts. We have new episodes every Wednesday. Don't forget to follow us on social media at Moderate Turbulence on Instagram, at Mod Turbulence on Twitter, and follow us individually on Instagram at HuffyJ and at La Delvie. Thank you.